Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum.
From the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
And we return with part two here with Dr. Ed Roth here in the MMHP in the 989. We want to thank everybody for tuning into episode one. Music therapy from a Michigander that started one of the original music therapy classes, or was in early on. That whole scene is really profound. I mean, for all of our listening pleasures and how everybody connects to music. And Ed Roth put together a system and studied all the way from here to Texas and around the world. And he's recognized as finding all the connections between the brain and how music connects and why we love what we love. And the fact that he's from Michigan here, we won't let go unnoticed here in the MMHP and the 989. We've connected all the dots from the music right to the brain for y'all. And the fact that Ed Roth is Sir Fred's nephew makes this episode a lot more sweet for us. So dig in, part two with Dr. Ed Roth.
So are you about to take on a new position?
Yeah.
This is going to be later this summer?
Yes, I am. So
is it going to be out of state then? You won't?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Yeah. So at the end of summer, I'm making a transition to the University of Houston.
Okay.
It's first of all, I mean, this quarter century at Western Michigan has been incredible. I came in at a time the university was just doing great and doing great things, and I got connected to the medical school, and this is where I was able to start all this research. And at a school like WMU, I could kind of do anything I wanted. They didn't say, you have to go out and get $250,000 a year in research funding, because it wasn't the culture in the School of Music. Still not really. So I was this novel guy. I'd go out and get 20,000 here or 50,000 there, and they thought, oh my God. Or meanwhile, my colleagues in biology, if you didn't bring in $250,000 a year, you might not get tenured. So now though, fast forward, now it's 2024. You're at the University of Houston. It's called an R1, a tier 1 school, which is they have to produce a certain number of PhDs. They have to get a certain amount of funding from the federal government to get that rank, and they did and do. It's like $350 million research budget a year, and it's about, student-wise, it's about Michigan state size, like 49,000 students. Mm-hmm. It's a city university. It's right in the middle of Houston. And one of the things it's going to let me do is the startup package that they gave me for research is remarkable. I won't miss a beat. There's enough money and personnel, and it also came with an appointment at this giant Texas medical center. So I forget the exact unit, to be honest with you. I think I'm part of their neuroscience institute.
Well, you haven't been down there yet either, so.
Yeah, I went down,
to start.
To start, yeah. I appreciate Scott letting me off the hook.
This is going to be cool to review, with you later after you get going, because here comes a whole nother layer.
A whole nother layer. And the Texas Medical Center, this is when we think of medical centers, we might think of either a big building or maybe a collection of buildings. Yeah. It's a city. Like if you looked at the Texas Medical Center skyline, you would think it was like Charlotte, North Carolina or something. It looks like a city itself. And in their brag information, they say that they have about 10 million patient contacts per year. About 120,000 times a day, the door opens either for patients or medical folks. And, I learned that there's a thing between Houstonians and whatever you call people from Dallas, Dalasians, Dallasers, Dallasians.
Houston, Dallas.
Yeah. If this makes it to Texas, somebody's going to crucify me.
They got to bring in Austin, because that's the music.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So there's a thing between those two cities, and I learned it because the people in Houston told me that the Texas Medical Center is so big that if you lifted it up, that the shadow on the ground underneath is bigger than the central business district of Dallas.
Whoa.
So I thought maybe it was a little Texas bravado. And it's just my way. Like, as a researcher, I've always been this way as a kid. Like, is that real? Maybe it's Italian side. Like, you're trying to get one over on me. So I went to Google Earth and I cut out the geography from the medical center and imposed it on a map of Central Business District of Dallas. And they weren't yanking my chain.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
It is huge, and so part of my appointment is at the Texas Medical Center. So while I will teach a class, or maybe even I'll teach a couple classes, I'll have that big research arm that's going on at the medical center.
It's got to be exciting for you.
It's so exciting, and the people down there have been incredibly welcoming. The music therapist, when I went down there, I expected cowboy hats, cowboy boots. To make it even funnier, like I'm so naive to Houston. I expected to see like 1970s Cadillacs with those Texas Longhorns.
Right.
Yeah, but now
Well, they used to be. When I was down there, that's what it was like.
That's what my mom says all the time. Now, comically, so I've told that story probably 20 times in the last 2 months. You know what I saw on the way up here today? A giant pickup truck that looked like Fred Sanford drove with Longhorn bolted into the hood. It was like in between Flushing and in Bay City. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah. So and the folks down there have just been incredibly welcome. Like already trying to get me involved in their projects, which I can't accept those invitations yet. I got to get things rolling at the university, but it's so nice to know that there's a welcoming crowd there already.
That's good stuff. Well, let's move away from that. And what do you listen to? What are you listening to?
Oh man! So what do I listen to? What do I not listen to? Man,
Mostly jazz.
jazz, blues. I don't even know what. Sometimes just depends on what people call it. Like, quote, world music.
Okay.
But I like the folk musics. So if you get rid of the idea that music is a universal language, but you consider music to be language, then just like there are multiple languages, there are multiple musics.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I love it. I love all of those kind of the folk music across multiple cultures. And so I might listen to like a Zydeco band, or then listen to some Irish reels. Trying to think of stuff that I've been listening to a ton of Italian music because I'm what is this now? We're in June, so whatever that is. I am 7 months away to my hearing. I'm applying for dual citizenship to Italy.
Oh, wow.
You still are.
Yeah, and I have my hearing at the Renaissance Center in Detroit in February, so I'll have to
Really?
fly back for that. So
What prompted you to seek citizenship in Italy?
Maybe the laughs are kind of knowing. So I saw this thing, I think it was on a CBS Sunday morning show. I don't know what it was, 4 or 5 years ago, and 5-6 years ago. And they were talking about all these, I don't know if you've heard of this, but these $1 houses or these €1 houses in Italy. So Italy has a population problem. The people who are there aren't making more Italians, and a lot of them are leaving because they just don't have opportunity to work, especially in southern Italy. So you get into Naples and Sicily and Palermo, all that stuff. There are ancient cities. A lot of them are in ruin, but they're trying to repopulate them by selling them, single euro homes. Well, his mom, my grandmother, was Napolitan. And so I was like, I wonder if I'm eligible. So you go online and you have to get past all the guys who are trying to sell you like, well, I'll figure this out for you. It'll only cost $700, and you can just do it yourself. So you go to the Italian consulate, you put in your information. Well, my great grandfather was born in Campania, and my grandmother was born prior to 1950 because there was something that happened that year. Hey, I think I'm eligible for dual citizenship.
Wow.
Find out, indeed I am. I went down to Lansing. I started getting all these documents. Then I realized I can't get all of them that's required. So when I was on sabbatical, I went over there. I went to Napoli. I went to Campania. I found the family's sort of the registry. I have my great-grandparents' birth certificates. somebody in the family, one of his cousins actually had the marriage license. So I have the original copy of that. I found
I got to get copies of those.
I'll show you.
Were you thinking about dual citizenship?
No, but he's got copies of
I have it, yeah.
my grandparents.
His grandparents, yeah. And then I found the ancestral home.
Right.
And actually, he had pictures of it. So when I started showing the guys in town, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we know where that is." And so they took me over there and looked at it. And one of the guys working for the town, this little town called Cole Sanita.
So was there someone living in the home?
No, it had been vacant actually since the family left.
Oh,
Wow.
okay.
So
Really?
yeah. So I never told you this. I can't believe it.
No.
So it's a multi-100-year-old building, but it's been vacant for 100+ years. And so the guy says, "Well, it's your family's. Do you want to buy it?" And I said, "Well, how much?" He goes, No. How much are you willing to pay? I said, Nah, I know these deals. This was to the guy who could speak English. And finally he said, I told him I'd give him 500 euros for it. He goes, "Oh, no, I'll sell it to you for 100 euros. Now the place looks like somebody threw a grenade. There's no floors, no walls, no electricity, no plumbing. The family left before electricity even made it in there. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, this place is rock steady. I'm going to buy this place, but I'm not going to buy it today." And he said, "Why? Why not?" And I said, "Well, I want to figure out what my tax liabilities are and what my legal obligations." And he said, "What? Like what tax?" And I said, "Well, I don't want you guys to charge me 110 years of back taxes." Well, now I won't, because I don't know how far I go on a podcast, but he basically was like, "What the blank are back taxes?" And I said, "Well, in the U.S., sometimes you move into a place and they want to, get their vig, and so they charge you all this." And he asked the guy next to him, "You ever heard of these back taxes?" And, "Yeah, I heard of them. Yeah, well, let me tell you something. We don't do these back taxes. You come in." And I said, "Okay. I heard guys who talk like you before. We're going to get a guy to write it up, and we'll get some on paper." And so then he goes, "And what are you talking? What are these legal protections?" And I said, "Well, you've seen it. What happens if a couple teenagers go in there and they get themselves hurt and impaled, and I own the place, and now I get sued because they got hurt?" Well, that's when this quiet wave of something came over, and he just looked me dead in the face. He goes, "Let me tell you something." He goes, "This ain't America. You're someplace you're not supposed to be and you fall down and get hurt. It's your blanking fault." And I was like, "Okay, well, we're going to put that on a piece of paper."
Right.
Yeah.
So then it turns out, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but there are 3 houses right next to that one.
No.
And they show me the record. The family owned that whole block. And so he said, "I'll sell you this whole block for 1,000 euros. Now the places are terrible, right? They're dilapidated, but they're, like I said, they're like multi-100-year-old structures. They're not going anywhere. And so, anyways, I had some people over here in Michigan, take a look at how much you think it'd cost to do this, and for about $30,000 per house, you can make this habitable and nice and livable and anyways,
Airbnb.
Well, you know what?
Over there.
So there's some jewelers that I know in town, because they're in the jewelry business. They got all these fancy connections in Europe and Brussels and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, "You should turn this into some kind of summer music therapy, and find out what they need in that part of Italy. Like what's an ailment that a lot of people have there? Is it environmental or is it in their genetics? And do that, treat them. And you can bring." They have connection to the community college in Kalamazoo. Like those construction students, they need internships, unpaid. Like, man, we can find a way to get their travel funded and all that kind of stuff, and they'll be the ones to rehab those buildings for you.
I didn't do it in Italy too.
My eyes start blinking. I'm like, wow, how fast will it take me to retire so I can go do that? Then I'm like, I need money to be doing, so I can't retire yet. But
That's cool.
It's so exciting, and the idea of doing music therapy over there. Italy has a very spiritual connection to music. In some ways, they get it. Like in the U.S., I got to tell you all this stuff about neurochemistry and spinal cord reflexes to beat and rhythm and pulse. It's that level of information that's required here. Over there, they're just like, yeah, body, brain, all this stuff. Like we got it. We're on it. We've been doing this for 1,400 years longer than your country existed.
Dang.
Which I did. Apparently I never told you any of this. I found the church that his grandfather, my great grandfather, was baptized in, And it is 1,200 years older than the United States. It's about a 1,400-year-old church.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's called the Church of the Annunziata, the Church of the Annunciation.
So this little city is,
Colle Sanita. Yeah.
and is it kind of functioning, or is it just kind of in decline?
No,
Because-
it's functioning. It's such a cute town, but you can see, like, yeah, I could see where my family would have come from. These people, you know, I mean, they were workers, mostly farmers, some like cobblers, who I found out, you know, I forget one of your uncles.
Passarillo.
One of your uncles was known as the little cobbler.
Frank Passarillo.
Oh, Frank Passarillo, yeah.
No, wait a minute.
That's
Frank
not.
Corelli.
It's no a guy named Giuseppe.
Corelli. Oh.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of folks, and yes, the town is functioning, but you know, they're not. It's not like Italy. It's close. It's 45 minutes to the Amalfi Coast, and so they see all these billionaires and yachts and all this stuff, and yet they're still living the life of a villager.
Oh, okay.
You know, and kind of it's all agriculture. So when we go there, like, as Americans, you go and you're like, "Am I in heaven?" You know, but for them, they feel a little isolated and cut off. And you know, Napoli is only 45 minutes due west, and the Amalfi Coast is kind of southwest. So they see all this stuff near them, and they're proud of their town. I'm still friends with some of them. Mm-hmm. When my son passed away last year, and I sent them a little note that had his picture on it, because they were very kind, and they sent over some flowers for the funeral. They put his picture up in City Hall.
Really?
Yeah, and took a picture and sent that to me. And so basically partly what we're waiting on is I want to buy that house or those houses as an Italian citizen rather than an American citizen.
Right.
Because I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it'll just be technically easier.
I would think so.
And these people have been so warm and welcoming, and to have my son's photo up in the city hall, that's pretty heavy stuff.
I guess so.
Were there any violas?
No, but they're not that I found, but the guys knew the name. They just said it wasn't that common. But the name that was there was Martuccio, that would have been your grandpa Viola's mother's maiden name. So the guy who's been helping me out, he's a Martuccio, and another woman who's on the city council, she's Martuccio, and they're all like, music is part of their life, so they like to talk about music a lot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if I start getting technical, they're like, yeah.
I have a music question.
Yeah.
I recently listened to an old song that I haven't heard in a long time, a Bob Dylan tune.
Yeah.
And after 40, 50 years, it still gives me goosebumps.
You telling me that story right now is giving me goosebumps all over my body. It's incredible. So I don't even know where to start. So you want to know like how that happens?
Well, you know.
So the how it happens that's easy. The why it happens, you might have to ask a priest that one. But the how it happens is like, so your body can't tell the difference between some carnal stuff, you know, things that either perpetuate your life as Fred Reif or the species in some. This goes to like Darwinian stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Natural selection. And so the old, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. So you can't actually tell the difference in the reward circuitry of the brain when somebody's listening to something they really like, or they're engaged in either actual sex or fantasizing about it, or eating, or certain classes of drugs. And so one of the things that music does that sort of precedes that pleasure reaction is it causes all the, you know, this, I forget what it's called, like maxillary response or something, which is a fancy way to say your hair stands up. And so it's this anticipatory thing, like you knew deep in your recesses that you liked this, there was some pleasurable thing that was about to happen, and your nervous system turned your whole body on and got you ready for that. We actually can, like temporally, like timing wise, we can tell when somebody's about to have a reaction to music before they have it, because those markers are in the brain, and then it gets expressed by these raising of the hairs. Why that happens evolutionarily, not exactly sure, but that's what happens. What's remarkable to the level of like fantasy is, how is it, anybody can relate to this, how is it that we have memorized probably thousands, but certainly hundreds, thousands of at least lyric fragments to songs and like melodies? You know, if I bam, there's a certain group of people would know immediately. I could be 3 or 4 notes into it. But yet, if I asked you information that you think you probably should know, hang on, it's coming to me. So clearly, music gives us some real life advantage. It's not just some softy arts thing. It has something to do with our survival. Otherwise, it would not have such a dominance in our lives, in our biological lives. We always talk about, like, there's this thing for a while where you ever heard of this guy, Steven Pinker? He's a Harvard professor, Harvard psychology professor. And back in the early 1990s, he was like, I don't know what all the hullabaloo about. He's an evolutionary psychologist. He's like, music clearly is nothing more than like leftover from evolution. It doesn't serve a purpose anymore. It's nothing more than auditory cheesecake. Well, man, that like made a lot of people really mad. Auditory cheesecake.
Yeah.
And so there was about a 20-year discussion amongst people who study the neurobiology of music. Like, is Pinker onto something? And most people think, no, he's way off. Music probably predates what we consider now language, speech. So then it begs the question, well, speech has had its time to boot music out of our biology. Why hasn't it? Well, whenever that question exists, it's because that thing, in this case it's music, still does something for us that's so important to support our lives, and not in a poetic way, but actually support our lives, that it still exists. And we're hanging out here on a Thursday night talking about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Yeah, another I find myself lately, all of a sudden, I'll be in my car and I'll sing a Beatles song.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? I never knew the lyrics 40 years ago. And now I'm going, how come I know the lyrics? I mean, it just came out naturally.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you clearly learned it offline, so to speak, meaning you might not have been aware, or you didn't sit down and play and practice it, but you heard it so many times that it got embedded. Yeah, there's this, I don't know, when you mentioned seeing videos online, I wonder if you had ever seen this video, and this goes back to Oliver Sacks. They show a guy, looks like he's, maybe in his 80s or so. He has Alzheimer's. He's in some kind of a treatment facility. In that case, he was in a hospital, and he's hunched over, completely disconnected from the world. And somebody comes on and puts a pair of headphones on, and it had Cab Calloway. And all of a sudden you see him physically like sit up straight, and his eyes look like somebody, he just boom. And then you see his body start moving.
I've seen this one.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Then he starts like kind of scatting a little bit, making nonsense. And then all of a sudden he starts singing. Yeah. Okay, well, we actually understand the neurobiology of how that works. When you see it, it looks like a miracle. And so a couple of friends of mine and I, we have this way like, yeah, it's not magic because we understand it, but it is magical. And when you do that with a live music therapist, with live instruments, in a way where you assess the person and you can do it predictably. And one of the things we know about people with Alzheimer's is that you have all this brain atrophy. If you actually look at a scan of their brain, a lot of it's not there. But one of the last areas to, for lack of a better word, to disintegrate, to atrophy, are these connections between a part of the brain involved with sound perception, and where memories get encoded, and those bundles, those fibers, are like the last to go. So when you present somebody music, all of a sudden you're like, what? This guy, my dad doesn't even know that he's my dad, yet he can sing like the entire Sinatra album from whatever.
Well, the power of music, that ability of music to take you back. In a lot of cases, you just remember things, that song. And
probably what's happening is it's much more complicated than I just explained, but it's so emotional that's probably the mechanism. Is it evokes this emotional reaction, and the connectivity between our memory centers and our emotion centers that gets activated, and so you have a feeling reaction to it first, and then all these memories come with it, and those memories then tend to make you feel even more. It's a CIA.
You got your grandfather, my father, to sing.
Yeah.
I never did my whole life. I never heard him sing, but you got him to sing.
Yeah. So around
the video of it.
Around 1990, I think the video you're talking about is actually an audio recording that my brother put on YouTube. And so this is like when what do you call those things? When the karaoke became a deal, like home karaoke machines. And it wasn't just your dad, but your mom too. So yeah, his mother was Napolitan.
Well, she always sang.
And she started singing, C'è la luna, mezzo mare, mama. And she goes, I can't sing anymore because of the dirty lyrics. And we're like, that's the only thing we want to hear. Well, his dad was German, and he sang this song about Frankenmuth. He goes, he was either improvising in the moment, or he was reaching back into a song he used to sing, because he sang, oh, Frankenmuth, oh, Frankenmuth, I passed out in the yard 9 beers ago.
That's beautiful.
This was not a singing kind of guy.
Right.
He was, straight-faced, straight-laced.
Yeah.
But man, in that moment, that music really brought it out of him. It was so cool to see, as the grandson. And if it was 1990, I would have been 20 years old.
Still on YouTube.
Yeah, it's still there. It's kind of fun. You go back on a birthday or something, and there's something about audio that is even richer. Like the first time, I didn't know we had that. I forgot about that recording. My brother kept it. And when I heard their voices, man, I just wept. Mm-hmm. There's something about this, that sound is so emotionally impactful, even more than video. Of course, I've seen tons of pictures and very sweet, but hearing their voices made them feel alive again. It was really something.
Yeah.
So that's part of when I was talking about hospice. That is sometimes like people will make audio recordings as gifts after their passing. Give it out to the family, and sometimes the family know about it, sometimes they don't.
Oof.
Yeah, really heavy, man. Heavy stuff. But it's not all heavy.
Yeah, fascinating.
Sometimes I've worked with little kids, they're called pre-primary speech impaired kids. They just can't, their speech hasn't developed so that they can say their R's and L's correctly. So, they say, I'm willy tired, that kind of thing. And so you have to work on the R's and the L's. So it's not all hospice and songs post, that kind of thing.
We got to go each end of the spectrum, I imagine, to see what's going on.
That's the deal. It's like, man, if there is...
never-ending study.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to the other end of the spectrum. Like, I've worked with people who had like problem pregnancies. And so the idea is like, mostly by decreasing the anxiety of the mother, you decrease all the cortisol that's going through her bloodstream, so you decrease the cortisol that gets passed on to the baby. I mean, it's literally, sometimes people use these terms that seem wild to me, but they call them like cradle to grave, or the other one is womb to tomb. But in terms of the age and the populations we work with, they're not wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I know, it's something.
I'm just blown away by all this. This is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a different kind of podcast, but good Lord, you filled the knowledge, man.
Man,
there's so many little things you see in clips that make you joyful, for music hitting older people or younger people, or people hearing for the first time, or whatever the case is. And it's just proves why people that love music have a different vibe. I mean, there's a lot more calm and relation, and
absolutely. Oh yeah, so speaking of that, one of the things I don't teach freshmen very often, or I haven't anyways for a long time. I will again soon, and in this new job, because it's only an undergraduate program. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about connecting with other people and social bonding, and that being a key component to mental health. And I said, what's one of the things that feels the most terrible within a relationship context. And they said being rejected, like, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, you ask somebody out, no, or there's a breakup. How many hit records were about breakup songs? You know, it's a key thing. And then we talked about, like, has anybody here had the experience where you go to a friend or somebody in your family and say, man, did you hear this new record by so-and-so? I love this song. And they're like, that sucks. and you just feel personally attacked, you know, because you connect to music, and this music says something about me that I can't say something about myself. So when they reject my music, man, they're rejecting me. And so that's one of the things we talk to, like, freshmen. Hey, when people start sharing their music preferences with you, they're reaching out, man. That's an opportunity to be like, and even if you don't like it, ask them, what do you like about it? What makes this, it makes me feel this or that. Like,
that's where we're lacking right there with a lot of things, is people asking the right questions to find out why they don't like it, rather than just attack why the face value of it.
Right, exactly. And like, maybe you don't like it because you really weren't exposed to it, or maybe it's too complex for you at the moment. Like, if all you ever hear growing up is music that's just bang, 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 then you hear some Stravinsky or some, crazy piece with lots of dissonance in it, it's going to sound terrible. There's a great story when Bernstein's Mass was premiered. He's like, oh man, it's going to be a big deal. They got the big concert hall, and everybody came in. They sold the tickets for a premium, but there was too much dissonance, like too much sound that sounded bad to the audience at the time, where they pulled their keys out and started rattling their keys to, like, show their displeasure. And then some people left. But now to us, like, you can hear where it sounds a little off, but we've been so exposed to what they considered dissonance back then that it doesn't sound bad to us anymore.
Right.
So,
my 4-year-old grandson, anyway, when we would go out to eat where they had chopsticks, he would take his chopsticks and he'd drum.
Yeah.
He'd just go crazy.
Yeah, it's so cool.
His 4th birthday, I bought him a drum set. And when he first played it, he looked like Keith Moon up there.
Wow.
Just the expressions and just going crazy.
Yeah.
So
well, keep him away from your dashboard, man. That's from my mom.
So is there some natural?
Yeah, it's probably like anything else. Like, yes, we are all musicians, more or less. Some people more, some people less. Same thing with athletes. But people have this, you hear this thing all the time, like, oh my gosh, you're so talented. Thank you. I also spent 12,000 hours over the last 20 years practicing while you guys were all hanging out. Yeah. Ask Michael Jordan how many free throws he took a day. 500 every single day. Like, yeah, Michael Jordan is more talented motorically and that type of thing than most of us. But he also had to make the most of it. And he did it 500 times a day. I used to spend 3 hours in a practice room playing a marimba, because that's what my primary instrument was for a handful of years.
Wow.
And then you play it, you go to a concert, and you make all this lovely music, and people say, you're so talented. And you're like, thank you. It's also, I work my ass off. Yeah, but they don't want, because there's something mystical. Musicians, they like you to just be supernatural.
It's funny hearing it from other people that just are passing by or you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
You get the talent comment.
Right, talent. Yeah. Oh, he's so talented. Well, my mom probably thanks you for that, but if you want to really recognize, it's because I was in a basement, by myself with a metronome practicing for 3 hours a day for 20 years. Yeah. I talk about, especially with people who they want to do music, but man, they're like, I'm not a musician. My brother is a musician in the family. I'm telling you, man, start playing just like everybody. I'd play your scales and arpeggios. Start doing all the boring stuff and do it repetitively. Have you heard this term before about the brain? It's called plasticity. So the brain is plastic, meaning that it can change. And one of the things that causes the brain to change is repetitive behavior. So when your piano teacher used to say, play your scales for a half an hour before and you're like, well, that's why your brain changed in such a way where, like, you can now play your scales without even thinking about it. You can't do it without putting in the time.
It's subliminally going to bed at night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that too.
You can practice your parts up to bedtime, but then playing it while you're falling asleep.
Scott, so get this. There have been all these studies that showed there is a part of the brain called the mirror neuron system. and you could actually rehearse something in your mind. In this case, we're talking about scales on a piano. And when they give you a test some number of weeks afterwards, you can perform those scales on an actual piano just as well, meaning the same accuracy as somebody who put their hands on the keys and practiced for the same amount of time. Mm. We saw that with people who had strokes too. Like it's called mental rehearsal, or sometimes like cognitive rehearsal. So we had people who had strokes, and we gave them music that I told you about before with the metronome and all that stuff, and just picture yourself walking to the beat. And then we had people actually walking to the beat. Same thing, people had strokes at the same level of disability and all that kind of thing. And at the end of a 6-week period, the people who imagined themselves walking to the beat walked just as well as the people who actually walked. What they did was they changed the neural circuitry in the motor planning areas in such a way that it facilitated their actual walking in the same way that actually walking did for the people who ambulated, in real life. Incredible.
I totally find that stuff fascinating.
It sounds. That's what I mean. It sounds like magic, but
it's absorption, just being there.
Yeah.
Oh. What's funny is another route I've taken on something similar. That I was I'm still a photographer, but I was shooting next to Detroit's best, Playboy's best, everybody that was in concerts. Elbow to elbow, and they all knew me by name, and I was just a local journalist and a writer for the Times, or whatever. And they would constantly ask me, how do you get the ones where the artist is doing this or that? I'm like, I know the tunes. Yeah. I know where they're going to hit that note. I know where they're going to make an expression because of that note.
Right, the feeling of
it.
And
you got to do it from a musical standpoint, not just stand there hoping, oh, here comes the perfect lighting, here comes the perfect staging, oh, he just walked over there. Yeah. No, you got to do it by segment of the song. Get your position.
So when I hear you say that, I hear two things. One, you emotionally understood the song. Two, you did your homework. You knew when it was coming.
I mean, when those guys were asking me, I'm like, are you shitting me? Really?
Right.
You guys are masters, It's like they're always gathering around. What? We all share photos, The younger ones I knew appreciated that. I'm like, just go learn their big hits. If they're going to open one of them tunes, you're going to get a lot of good ones when that solo comes on.
Sure.
Or when that singer's going to make his entrance. Because everybody's going to get those shots. And it was a funny thing putting it all together because you just see it.
See, this is the kind of stuff we could. There's never a shortage. We can talk all night. There are all these studies where they show like when people are actually watching musicians make music, so you can actually see their bodies make the music, see their facial expression, you feel those emotions at a much higher level than people who can only hear the music, and at a higher level than people who are watching but with no sound. So the combination of somebody physically making the music, in addition to the being able to see it, especially their facial expressions. The other part, not only do you feel it more, but you feel it more correctly. So the musicians would say, what I felt was X, Y, and Z. And then when they interviewed the people in the study afterwards, they said, well, what I felt in reaction was X, Y, Z. But the people who only watched the video but didn't have any audio, they said, well, I felt A, B, and C. So they were misreading the video, misreading the emotion in the video. So that combination, and that clearly is something that's hardwired in us. And it's not just one culture, that's a human phenomenon.
That's another fascinating thing to take down to the people that are deaf that are feeling the vibrations. And you see a lot more videos of that nowadays.
Right, you do.
Of like they're blind and they're putting their hands on things and they're blind and deaf or whatever, and they're just like, you can see them, the band, you hear the band hitting that spot, and you see the person just like, wow, what was that, and they're vibing.
Yeah.
And I was always like thinking, when and how, African music.
Yeah.
Italian music.
Yeah.
Blues, whatever. Native American music.
Which I love.
Where did all that vibration, African music has got its own,
polyrhythms,
Yeah. And how did that funnel its own direction from that point of spot in the earth? It had to be geometric,
I don't know.
Because it's not like they were hearing what Russia was hearing.
No. Yeah. That's probably. I don't know. I mean, the most.
This is crazy.
The most recent theory around it is that the music, meaning like the language of the local music, probably resembled their spoken language also. And so, or really it's the other way around. Their spoken language resembled the music.
Kind of like mountain music here in America, and the hillbilly music and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see where all of it comes from, and when you hear a native sound, how did that come out, and why are they, is that vibration still happening over there?
Yeah.
My mind goes to that spot of like, it's so wild how we all don't hear the same thing, but we all have a different way of doing things.
That's actually totally true. Yeah, we don't hear the same thing. Some of it's culturally, but some of it's also. You ever see the videos where somebody has a cochlear implant?
Yeah.
And they flip the cochlear implant?
Yeah, my buddy's daughter.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so the buddy both cried and the mom. And
she's like...
Yeah.
Or the one with the vision. And not even it's a different thing, but it's like, oh.
So you have somebody who can't hear, but it's something wrong with the cochlea, the interpretation of sounds. This is what my research partner does actually as his day job. He's a surgeon. The guy who did This Is Your Brain on Improv, he's actually a neurosurgeon, and he does all these cochlear implants. And so put the implant in, turn the implant on, and then the first thing they usually hear is they hear their own voice. They'll say, "Is it on?" And they're like, "Oh." And then a parent will say, "I love you, Janet," or whatever, and then the tears come because they're hearing for the very first time. And so his big mission now is two things. What's the neurobiology of creativity? Because he wants to figure out how can we make humans more creative? Because that's how we're going to solve, he's got this cool phrase, we're going to solve the problems of tomorrow that we can't even imagine today by figuring out creativity. And his other one is he wants to figure out how they can make cochlear implants sound better so that people who need them hear music the way we hear music.
I wouldn't doubt that they go so far as to help people that are older or have had accidents or anything along the way.
Sure.
To not even get, if you already got good sound, to improve on it even.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We're all gonna have whatever they call it now.
Chip in us.
HD 4K audio in our heads. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Thanks, man, for coming on.
Hey, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
it was
you.
really
Thanks
great.
for having me. Thank you.
Fantastic episode. Wow.
Guys.
I hope this glues together a lot of why you people that listen to this podcast love music, because at the end of the day, we're all connected in there.
We are all connected. Yep.
Appreciate you.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network, or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the voice of the MMHP and the 989.
What cracked me up, honestly, I was having to bite the back of my tongue so I wouldn't burst out laughing at Mike. I thought you would not want me to bring up the whole thing about the girls at the gig.
Oh,
and that's the first thing he talked about.
You haven't heard all of our podcasts, have you?
He goes, no. She's like, no, show me how to play it. He was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm getting out of here.
The rub board.
The rub board.
Rub board players had